aggressive environment on the tube.
Similar to putting yourself into a war zone type situation.
So overcrowding is really bad. I don't see how it's going to get any better. It's going to get worse. Everybody wants to get somewhere. Everyone thinks that they're the most important person. Everyone just wants to get on with their day.
Overcrowding is putting an immense strain on the London Underground system and those that use it. The tube now carries over 4 million passengers every single day and over 1.2 billion a year. But is enough being done to tackle this human congestion? Many are still concerned about a markedly slow pace of change, resulting in a total nightmare for London's commuters. I'm going to see how severely these crowded conditions can affect passengers and whether there's a light at the end of the tunnel for London's heaving tube network. For most commuters, the crowds are just a daily irritation, a fact of life. But for others, they can actually be traumatic. I spoke to Susie Chandler, who relies on the tube to get into work, and whose daily commute has had serious implications for her well-being.
Well, aside from feeling claustrophobic on the tube pretty much every day, because it's just horrendous at rush hour, there have been specific times when it's been particularly bad. It's crowded. It's worse when I'm standing up, because basically if I ever have a sort of panic moment on the tube and feel claustrophobic, then my legs start to shake, and if I'm standing up, it's really, really unpleasant, because where are you going to go? You can't fall on somebody else. So I had a particularly bad experience once where we'd stopped. We were in the tunnel for about 40 minutes, and that was really horrific. I got really hot, and I just, I felt like I couldn't breathe. And, you're just surrounded by all these people who also don't want to be there either. So, that was a particularly memorable, in a bad way, experience for me.
After speaking to Susie Chandler, I wanted to see how common her experience really is. So I'm off to see Andrea Perry, a psychotherapist, who after 7 years of not going on the tube has decided to talk to us about her experiences.
Oh, hi, hello, come in. Nice to meet you. Yeah, nice to meet you too, come in.
Could you explain to me why someone like Susie Chandler would respond like this to an overcrowded tube?
So the thoughts of, well, actually this is just a tube train that has stopped between platforms, that's gone, and all there is gotta get out, which is not really a thought, it's just like a message going across the brain, get me out of here. People really, really dislike the crowding, and people comment to me on the crowding for sure, because it has got worse. I mean, everybody would know that there are more people being transported.
What conditions make the overcrowded tube a dangerous environment?
I mean, the tubes are very crowded. So one of the problems there is that you've got probably greater body heat. You've probably also got reduced oxygen, literally, in the more people breathing it. So there are certain factors. I mean, when you have that physiological response, when you have a physiological response of panic, your body will become very animated and energized for movement. So if you're feeling like that and there are many people around you, yes, it may compound it.
A Freedom of Information request we submitted shows that at least one person fainted on the tube every day over the last 2 years. Perhaps no surprise, given that there are over 4 people per square metre on the carriages during rush hour. Under EU law, pigs and cattle get more space. A report by the Transport Committee in 2009 concluded that overcrowding is known to have a range of negative effects, including stress, poor productivity, and potentially poor heart health. I spoke to Dr. Glenn Williams, a psychologist who contributed to the original report, and asked him about the risks of travelling on the heaving underground.
People are in a very psychologically stressful and physically stressful situations. The long term is more to do with the psychological damage and the feelings of burnout, and when people are coming home after a stressful day and they're getting back into that jam of bodies. So it's what's happening to their psyche that I think is more crucial, rather than something that's happening to them physically long term.
And do you think enough's being done to solve the problem?
I think that there's a lot of work to be done, and hopefully the current London Mayor can do something about it, or perhaps the future London Mayor, which won't be too long away, should really work on this. Because otherwise, a lot of people's physical and psychological health and well-being will continue to be affected.
Boris Johnson was unavailable for comment, but I went to see MP Richard Tracy, who is a key member of the Transport Committee. I wanted to ask him whether he thought there could be any lasting solutions to the overcrowding problem.
If the population does just sort of go on growing, and without people deciding either not to travel on the trains, or less of them to travel on the trains, so start walking or cycling, of course, these days. Without that, then it will obviously get worse and worse. But the train operators have got to put on more trains, or run a lot more trains to cut down on that, because it is a fact of life that the prediction is that there will be 10 million people living in London by 2030, and a whole lot of people commuting in, and so it's got to be made more comfortable for people right across the board, on the buses, on the trains and on the underground.
For people like Susie Chandler, Mr Tracy's comments don't inspire much hope, even if the Transport Committee's proposals were implemented fully, and let's hope there are many more to come. The problem of overcrowding will still remain. In fact, the most telling statistic is that by 2030, the tube will have increased its capacity by 30%, but by that time demand will have gone up by 40%. TfL upgrades just cannot keep pace with demand, so for now it seems, daily crush is here to stay.